Good afternoon, everybody, those in the room and those online. Welcome to the ANU China Seminar Series for today's seminar. I was just mentioning to our speaker earlier that since the pandemic, we've grown used to hybrid things and things online and so forth. And we have had some people presenting seminars in this series who aren't Canberra-based or haven't come to Canberra from somewhere else in Australia since the particularly bad days of the pandemic. But I think there have not been very many seminars in this series where we've actually had somebody who's based overseas in Canberra in person. And there's something rather special about that. So thank you so much, Kachai, for coming. It's a wonderful thing to see somebody, actually there, real and so on. So it's our honor today to host Associate Professor Tam Kachai from the History Department of the Baptist University in Hong Kong. Kachai is a specialist on Ming and to some extent Qing dynasty matters. He's remarkably well published in legal affairs, he's worked on GIS things, on maritime and transport history, on various other aspects of Ming and Qing history, and is producing things every year several times, which is quite intimidating for some of us, but it's great to see. Kachai was educated originally in Hong Kong at the Chinese University, where he did his bachelor's degree and his master's degree, and then at Oxford, where he did his DPhil. And I think that's where you met Mark, would that be right?
Yeah.
That's right. So this is a very nice reunion of sorts for these ex-Oxford folk, but it's great to have you here to present your work to us in this seminar. So today, Kachai's formal title, as you can see it up there, Information on Foreign Laws in Government and Privately Published Sources from Ming China, which he tells me is actually got some things in it that are rather confronting and shocking. Is that right? That wasn't the word you used.
I hope so.
Things like that. So be prepared to be excited.
Yeah,
the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ben, for the kind introduction. And I'm very happy to come here in person to see you all. And, I already learned some of you before coming because of that I used to be a co-worker of Victor Fong. I think Victor is one of your, your classmates. Well, several years ago, right? And now I'm really honored to, have this chance to share my opinions and also my findings on really specialized topic. Ben mentioned that the formal topic of today is rather dull, yeah, because it's quite, quite formal about the information, all and lawless. But what is really interesting is that the contents, or maybe the perceptions of traditional Chinese, particularly during the Ming Dynasty, what the impression of what ways did they really understood? Did they understand the situation of the foreign countries, which are mainly connected to China via maritime routes? And so I think, well, in the due course of my presentation, you will learn why I think these matters are quite, provoking or maybe sort of eye-opening, because I didn't realize that the Ming Chinese they saw the world in these manners. Okay, so again, I'm really privileged to have this chance to have a talk to you in this maybe perhaps the most prestigious university in the South Hemisphere. Yeah, in meeting you, those countries here in the ANU, like Ben. Thank you very much, for letting me come. And now, as presentation start. So the topic today investigates the legal information of foreign countries collected in the records of diplomatic missions, as well as the popular daily encyclopedias. So it is the main source of the privately published sources that I'm going to share with you today. They are called the riyong, leishu by modern scholars, mainly from the Ming Dynasty, but occasionally there are earlier publications of this type, being the Yun, the Mongol period, and also the early Qing dynasties. The former, the official publications are governmental or semi-official works written by diplomats or retired officials to inform the government and the seafarers about the history and the most current situations of tributary states over the oceans. Apart from some personal experiences of foreign missions from the later reigns of the Ming, the main body, however, of these official narratives are founded by the information gathered from the expeditions of the great Admiral Zhang He during the early 15th century. So we all know that this is a massive mission expedition to collect information from overseas. So I can conclude that many of those official records, the production, or maybe the records founded by the Zhang He mission. And we also have selected, selected 3 official works among many others for our data collection and discussions. The first one is the Xiyang Qiao Gong Den Ru Jiao Zhu by Hang Shang Zheng. Sorry, I'm Cantonese, so that's why my Mandarin pronunciation is so funny. And yeah, sorry about that. Which is published in 1920s, about a century after the conclusion of Zhang He's journeys. It gives detailed accounts of the legal system of the major tributary states of Indochina. The second is the Dongxiyang Hao by Zhang Xie. It is a 1617 publication, mainly containing commercial products of foreign countries interested by the Fujianese merchants. So why this guidebook is published, I think, is mainly for the interest of the Fujian seafarers. They are going overseas legally or illegally. Because at that time, during the Ming Dynasty, most of the time, most of the wings are, imposing prohibition to the sea. And the third account that I'm going to discuss with you is perhaps the most erudite account of this kind, the Su Yu Zhou Zhi Lu by Yan Chongjian, which is also published about the same time of the daily encyclopedias in the highly commercialized Wani period that I'm going to share with you also as another type of major sources I'm going to discuss today. So surprisingly, almost totally, this work, this very erudite, really learned word for the officials or maybe for the scholars to read, totally ignores the legal issues of the foreign peoples, except giving a very brief description of the Korean law. So these are the main sources I'm going to discuss with you today. On the other hand, the other type of sources I'm going to give you some impression today is the daily encyclopedias. They're really the apple of today. I think they are really interesting. Perhaps it's not that popular in Chinese studies because the circulation was quite limited in the past. But now I think more and more scholars from Taiwan and also Singapore, they are having stronger interest in this type of source. So maybe it's worthy for you to having some deeper impressions on them. Those encyclopaedias are privately compiled and published to cater the vulgar taste of the urban class newly emerged since the late 16th century, who were seeking knowledge and entertainment from these self-studying guidebooks. Interestingly, the private publishers in the late Ming, they had a program to educate the public, particularly the urban people, by giving them different levels of guidebooks for them to do the self-studying. So this was quite impressive. The first level is some sort of word or character recognizing guides. So after maybe acquiring certain 100 basic words, basic characters of the Chinese language, they can go for higher level, and the daily encyclopedia is perhaps the highest level of this self-studying experience that equip the people, the common people, some basic knowledge about medicine, about foreign countries, or about governmental institutions, all sorts of these things. And at the end, because of this thanks to the contribution of these education programs, the commoners can purchase novels and other works to read themselves. That is maybe that the publisher they had created the market for their cultural works. So it is important to point out that almost all of this type of daily encyclopedias had input the information of foreign countries from the same source. It is the lawless record of naked creatures, because human beings is considered maybe the leader or maybe the best kind of the naked creatures. They are further head creatures in the scheme of the Chinese understanding of the world of animals. It is the same source lawless to form their narratives onto peoples outside the China public. Indeed, before it became widely accepted by the commercial publishers, the lawless had also served as an important reference for the Ming officials carrying out their diplomatic errands, such as conferring title to the king of Ryukyu, the islands, or the southmost islands of Japan nowadays. And the lawless widely popularity and influence throughout the Ming notwithstanding, its original version is not extant for our consultation. We can only surmise from the hints of the later heavily edited variants to conclude that in the unedited form, the account of each country should be much longer. So now we have only accounts of a few, maybe a few dozens of characters, but the original should be longer, maybe a few hundred words for each country. So if not in a standard format containing occasional comments by the original author, but we still have acquired some key information about this original. The author of the original version of the lawless is nowadays we can identify who is it. It's the retired diplomat of the Yun dynasty, the Yun court, Zhou Zizhou, who presented this work in 1367 to a very infamous guy in Chinese history, to Hu Weirong, who is the last prime minister, or maybe the Changshang of the Ming dynasty, who was killed by Zhu Yuanzhang, by the Ming founding empire, because of high treason. It is the diplomatic guy who received this work on behalf of the Ming court. Anyway, Hu Weirong had composed, perhaps it's the only extant word of this chancellor who was killed by the Ming founding empire. He composed a preface to the lawless, which mentioned that Zhou Zizhong's intention to prepare this work is to sharing his own diplomatic experiences to the emerging new dynasty that formally established 1 year later. So it's just a year prior to the Ming dynasty's finding that the court received such an important work on diplomatics. More interestingly, we also learned that the Minister of Justice of the early Ming, Kai Ji, another guy, because my first research is on the establishment of the Great Ming Code. So I am quite familiar with the name Kai Ji, but well, is it also mentioned in the law law because this Minister of Justice composed the postface of the original work of the law law. He gave credit to Zhou's possible contribution to the new empire's handling of the foreigners presenting tributes to China. So, well, why Zhou Zizhong presented the work? Because this law law would be useful for the new dynasty to deal with the foreigners. So this is one of the reasons that maybe Kai Ji and Riyong, these two guys, these two high officials, are so interested in this work and to the introduction to the empire about Zhou Zizhong's contributions. But well, there's another thing that why I mentioned Kai Ji for these details is because he's a legal official. He's the head of the Justice Department, and his deep interest gives hints that the original version of the work should be seen as a meaningful reference for legal officials during the consolidation process of the Ming legal system. So it's critical why the Minister of Justice is so interested in the original version of the Lawless Rule. So it's one of the reasons that I'm quite interested in seeing what sort of legal information is contained in this work, and to see if there's some hints that maybe Zhou Zizhong or the ministers, they wanted to advise the Ming founding empires about his legislation. And after a few centuries, this work was appropriated wholesale as the text for one of the chapters of the daily encyclopedias under the rubric of various barbarian lands. Sorry for friends outside China, because we used to call those foreigners barbarians. But anyway, it's the way that the title of that chapter is composed, and thus became the most important source of foreign knowledge of the general public, because the daily encyclopedia adapted this word as one of the important source of knowledge of the foreign countries. It is not worthy to point out that the late Ming commercial publishers had their full liberty to choose from the different elements of the Lawless Rule to fit their own agenda in introducing the different foreign peoples. So there's some pool or maybe some longer description of the foreign countries, but why and how they choose from that pool of information to compose their shorter description of certain countries, something that is really interesting, and maybe need further research. But what we see here is that it's a shorter version with the choices of the editors of the commercial publishers. And at the end, however, most of them made the same text to include the legal information found in those foreign countries mentioned in the following sections. There are at least maybe 13 extent sources of titles of this sort of daily encyclopedias, but my choice is the Meiji Wanbu Chuanshu, published in also 1612. Well, it's almost the same year of those official publications I've mentioned. It's the first part of the sources of today that published during the one-year period. And because this word, this Meiji Wanbu Chuanshu, comprises the accounts of 139 foreign countries, which is the largest collection among the layman encyclopedias, and contains some unique legal information found, in other words, so that the following discussions are based on this fusionist compilation and buttressed by occasionally quotes from the diplomatic accounts I mentioned earlier, produced by the Ming officials. So let's see what is inside these accounts. And now the section is, well, it's not an introduction anymore. Now I'm telling you to the attention of the foreign countries of respectable legal systems. So outside China, there's something worthy as well. During the Yuan dynasty, people already recognize it, and also it is transmitted as some sort of impression of the Ming people. So, although the editors of the layman encyclopedias put the term barbarians in the title of the chapter of foreign peoples, the text of the accounts on different countries shows no cheap discrimination of the other living of others living outside China. On the contrary, Zhou Zizhong should have admired some civilized foreigners when addressing their legal systems. The most obvious example of these respectable peoples is the Koreans, as reflected by the following entry about this coast labor of China. So you may see the description of the guidebooks, because at that time, before the establishment of the Ming dynasty, okay, the country or the ruling house of Korea was not Chaoshan in the later era, but Gaoli. So this is the account of the guidebook. So let's see what is in the description here. The ritual and music, poetry and writing, medicine and divination from China, this central country, were all transmitted to this country. Gurus, offices, and institutions all follow those of the Chinese people, and in norms or groups and heads, they follow those of Chinese dynasties. Their customs esteem Confucianism. They are benevolent and gentle, dislike killing, and their penal codes included no cruel punishments. So you can see it is a very positive description of the Korean legal order. Put this into the context of early Ming. What is your impression of Zhu Yuanzhang, the Ming founding empire's his usage of punishment? What is it? It's ultra legal order, or maybe we call him maybe a very brutal empire, employing really bloody measures to so-called cure the problem of the society. But compared to this sort of really bloody regime, what is happening in Korea? What was happening in Korea at the same time mentioned by Zhou Zizhong, or maybe by the editors of the encyclopedia, is that in Korea there's something good, something even better than the Chinese order. So comparing against the rather chaotic legal system of China under the Mongol rule, under the Yuan dynasty, the Korean system emphasizing benevolence and disapproving cruel punishment must be very appealing to the early Ming people, and should have been serving as a good guide for the legislation of Zhu Yuanzhang. In some other encyclopedias, the reason of the Korean benevolence is not esteeming Confucianism, but Buddhism. So there's some diversity in the records, but the truth must be Buddhism, or the connection between the rather light punishment of the Gaoli, of the cruel code, should be because of the royal family of that dynasty is very keen believers of Buddhism. They're Buddhists, so in the mind that the the Buddha will not kill people. Is sort of the reason why perhaps the Korean law is relatively lenient to their subjects. So anyway, the important thing is that is the admiration of the editors, or maybe the author of the law to the Korean legal order. And moreover, in the 俗语周之录 and the diplomatic record, the above narrative is supplemented by the following rules. Only the leading criminal of wrongdoers, or the ones condemning their own parents, are decapitated. Capital punishments are reduced to banishment to the islands, and crimes of different degrees can be pardoned after cumulative amnesties. So, the diplomatic record gives more details, or maybe quote longer from the original source of the law to give a better picture, or maybe a more balanced picture of the Korean situation. So, not a paradise at all, but because they still have this sort of punishment to the common people. Okay, anyway, so you can tell from the differences of the daily encyclopedia and the official diplomatic records that the Chinese, on the Chinese side, they in the development of the Ming dynasty, they try not to praise the Korean system too much. They want to balance it because it is still a tributary country, it's still somebody inferior to the Chinese civilization. So you can see the balancing efforts in the right course. So besides some other countries also have good elements in their legal system comparable to the tradition of the Chinese. The law of Jinna, the Cambodian kingdom, though having some gruesome elements in modern standard, employing separate streams of punishment to treat their own subjects and the foreign visitors, it should be seen as a good reference for the many legislators in dealing with different peoples having legal disputes inside China. So there's something maybe related to Victor Fong's research that different peoples in the Chinese legal order should be treated differently, or maybe there's a consideration that foreign people should follow some different rules. But it was actually the case in the Chinese records about the foreign country of Zhenna. Let's see the record here about the kingdom of Kuma, Gaomen or Zhenna in the daily encyclopedia and the official records of the diplomacy. So when the people of this country committed banditry, they are punished by mutilating the arms and chopping off the feet. Also, it's rather traditional Chinese because it's the old way before the Han Dynasty that the Chinese people are dealing with the so-called criminals. So it's more than corporal punishment, right? So chopping off the hand and the limbs, and branding the chest and the back by burning stacks. In addition, they are all treated by tattooing the forehead. So these sort of punishments are quite familiar to Chinese, but while it is not used, or maybe not anymore employed after the early Ming period. Okay, and so let's see the other paragraph. For the offender of capital crime, they are punished by decapitation or by penetration through the buttocks and a sharpened pole. So that's why I'm seeing my presentation rather provoking because of this sort of things. Of course, not very comfortable for the criminal. So to make the criminal kill in front of the crowd, and this type of punishment serves the crime of strangulation. So strangulation is some showing off of the dead body, or maybe the process of killing to the public, and this gruesome stick, killing is similar, or having the similar effect. Okay, let me talk about this later on. So in case of, let's continue the narrative here for the kingdom of Rome. In the case of those foreigners killing the Chinese, they will repay their crimes by the death penalty according to their own laws. If it is the Chinese killing those foreigners, when death occurs, well, the offenders will be heavily fined in cash. So it's some privilege for the Chinese when they are having disputes in the kingdom, in Cambodia. They may have solved the problem by cash. Okay, their own persons will be sold for the indemnity if they have no cash to pay. So the Chinese need not to be killed in the whole punishment or by decapitation, but by paying cash or being a slave in the country. The above account echoes the description of the Jiyangqiao Gong Dianlu Zhao Shu to the Jin legal system, which adds the mutilative elements of nose cutting, knee removal, banishment after tattooing, and limb cutting. So all these are the traditionally used punishment in the Chinese legal system before the Han Dynasty, and we introduced shortly in the early Ming. At the same time, however, these accounts are significantly different from the witness report by the famous Yun diplomat Zhou Daguan, another diplomat who visited Zhenna during the Yun Dynasty in the early 14th century, who witnessed the customs and social order of Cuba by the end of that century, and by the end of the 13th and early 14th century, and composed the famous Jin Fengtu Ji. If you are interested in the really massive, World Heritage Angkor you should have some knowledge about this record. So it is the Chinese record on the heydays of the Cambodian kingdom, who built all these monuments in stone or in other really handling materials. So Zhou Daguan tells us that there was no decapitation and strangulation in the legal system of the Cambodian kingdom. If both accounts are correct, the Lawchong Rules information properly reflects the new addition to their legal system during the 14th century. Zhou also mentions that the accused person in a fact case could avoid judicial torture and other torments by requesting the trial by audio. He can put his hand into a pot of boiling oil, and if it's the European way of testing whether or not the criminal is guilty or the accused is guilty, and if his hand is unhurt, then his innocence is proved. Zhou approves this legal testing method as suitable, or in Chinese words, it is 合取. Okay, he preferred this over the Mongolian ways of justice, and mentions that the same way of trial by audio was also employed by the tribal people in the Yunnan province of China. Dongxi Yangkao properly followed Zhou's account of the hot oil audio. Indeed, this judicial method was a widely used way of fact-finding in the world of the Lawchong Rule. Okay, the child order. So one addition, just one addition here about the very gruesome pole punishment. The pole, this type of punishment, well, as mentioned by other sources, is an introduction from South India. So it's not Chinese. And well, there's some more details about it, but I'm not going to mention them to you to make you happier for dinner. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to discuss another sort of countries or legal system. The countries employing trial by ordeal. The traditional myth of justice of China tells us that in ancient times there was a secret unicorn called Xie Xi, who could determine right or wrong in a legal case by killing the wrongdoer by its horn. So it's easy for the ancient judge to do the job. So just release the animal and kill the wrongdoer. This story is transmitted as the ideal form of justice, that the legal cases could be decided by the divine wisdom. But in later times, the Chinese have been increasingly rational, and this ideal form eventually gave way to the more technical fact-finding methods, such as judicial torture and forensic sciences. However, the rational method of later periods had no guarantee of justice because of the cunning minds of the people and the limitation of technologies. During the centuries when the Lu was composed and circulated in Europe and many other parts of the world, this abandoned form of trial in China was still widely employed. So that outside China is widely employed. So the Zhou Zizhong mentioned them, and maybe suggest them should have some practical purposes, probably suggesting the reintroduction of them to China. Okay. So that's why this sort of trial by ordeal is repeatedly mentioned in this word. So let's see the case of Zhengcheng, the kingdom of China. I assume that you know where it is, South Vietnam. It's a part. But now we may have good noodles, good rice noodles, but well, at the ancient time they will have some very interesting way of practicing justice. So in the record of Zhou Zizhong in the Lu, we can see that if a certain commoner is attacked and devoured by crocodiles or tigers, crocodiles, I just probably remarked that it's also a problem in North Australia, right? So maybe you can try this sort of justice in the future. If you think the costs are not fair enough. So the victim's fellows may launch a campaign to the king, and the king will then order the wizard of the state to approach to the spot of killing by bubbling spells onward. When arriving the destination, he will throw a magical talisman to that place. Thus, the tiger or crocodile responsible to the crime will come voluntarily to face the justice. So it's good. The killers, the animal killers, will come to the justice by themselves voluntarily. And in other legal cases, if the judge cannot decide a lawsuit of deception of public affairs, the accused should then be ordered to swim through a crocodile pool. If the accused is on the wrong side, the crocodile will eat this wrongdoer. If he's on the right side, the crocodile will prevent him and dare not to eat this righteous person. So, do you like it? I don't know. But there's some technical problem. If you are accused, then you are in the really inferior position because you are required to jump into the pool, right? So who accused whom? would be a problematic issue. If I accuse you, then you to do it we positively to me, then who is the accused would be problematic. So these sort of technical things, please bear them in mind. That in the meantime, I will introduce you more, more details about the Chinese records or other Chinese records on this sort of matter. The experience of this the kingdom of Chamber informs us that with the support of some good magics, the fierce predators could be a good aim of justice, so they can be helpful for people to decide cases. The earliest Chinese source of this trial by crocodile, not by other secret animals, but by crocodiles, is the Fulanzhang, of the Langshu. So it marks era. So it's very early Chinese record. And so you know what? The problem is that this is where we rather medieval record of the foreign countries. But in late Euro China, people still employing this sort of impression to see the foreign countries and or maybe to as some sort of facts about the foreign countries. So I would say it would be doubtful if the Tancheng people at the time of the Yun Dynasty is really using this sort of trial by audio, trial by crocodile. But anyway, it is recorded in the official records and also in the daily encyclopedias. And the crocodile pool also echoes the description of the Xiyang Chao Gong and Lu Zizhu, which adds the information that the judge also asks the accuser to cause the pool, and they are not directly jumping. And they are not, okay, because directly jumping into the pool is quite dangerous. Okay, and who is the first one to jump would be already sort of justice or sort of choice of the judge. So there's some further descriptions from the official diplomatic records about the situation about the application of this form. And so they are not directly jumping into the pool, but instead causing by riding on a buffalo. Okay, the description is here. In the country, there is a great pool, and the pool's name is crocodile. Whenever there is an unsettled legal dispute, the contesting parties are ordered to cause the pool by riding on a buffalo. The crocodile will eat the wrongdoer, but the right one can cause the pool many times without harm. So poor buffalo. I'm quite sympathetic to the officers. They are innocent anyway. Okay, they are truly innocent party. So one technical issue for this trial by crocodile is that which party should go first. Okay, so if they are contesting and they are both responsible for the issue, they are having the liability to their actions, right? So the encyclopedia version mentions that only the accused was asked to jump into the pool, but the official account gives details that the accuser should also go through the same challenge. So both parties are required to go. If I'm accusing you, I would be very likely also jumping into the crocodile pool. What is the consequence? Or maybe what is the implication of this sort of justice? Is that many people would dare not to go to the court, right? So it's maybe the very smart way of realizing the Chinese ideal of no court issues, 无中， yeah. So moreover, the Xiyang Chao Gong Den Lu Zhao Zhu also records that Zhangcheng has a formal legal system containing 5 types of punishment, namely beating the back by canes, nose cutting, face bending for auditory cases, hand cutting for theft cases, and sharpened pole penetration. So it's the usual way. We also learn from other records, which is borrowed from India and shared by China, that penetrating the body from the person to the mouth by a sharp pole installed on a boat. And the bowl with the penetrated body on board will travel through the waters as a warning to the others. So it's also sort of showing off punishment to demonstrate justice and maybe to intimidating others to commit similar types of crimes. As it is the nature of human beings to avoid providing information of their faults, which may bring the doom to themselves, judicial measures such as torture were widely employed in the traditional Chinese courts. Okay, so in China, I had produced some studies on the arguments, or maybe on the on the struggles of the legislators and also the judges in implementing the judicial tortures at court during the Ming and Qing dynasties. And all of the judges found that it is not very useful to find out the facts, because you never know what really happened. The people just okay, if they can really stand your torture, it may only be because of the result of their tolerance to pain. It's not really demonstrating of justice. So in late Qing, during the late Qing period, even before the introduction of the legal reform, inspired by European laws, the judicial torture was not widely used, or maybe generally had already generally stopped or maybe postponed in the Chinese court. So it is something that not very useful and widely understood by the judges for the court to find out the facts. So wrongdoers with incredible tolerance to pain could pass on trial and be released by the system, while innocent people fearing the pain would give false confession. Therefore, perhaps a good medicine of confession could contribute to the better legal decisions. According to the Lawless, this medical medicine could be found in the country of Lanchang, Liaochang Guo. Okay, let's see. So what's happening, or what is the best cure for justice, for giving for making the people to give confessions? When a commoner committed a capital crime, because they establish no death penalty in their laws, the offender is then banished to the empty mountains to gather his own drinks and foods in the wilderness. In a dubious case, the litigants are ordered to take a medicine of confession, so that the purity and impurity can be verified automatically, and the punishment can then be decided according to the matter's degree of seriousness. So this treasure could solve many technical problems of the Chinese judiciary if it was really available to the main courts. So it's something ideal about the other countries that the Chinese would mind. And so I have discussed with you, introduced you a lot of things about the countries having a sort of formal legal system or penal code. But how about the countries without a formal penal code? So let's see the descriptions of Lawless to these peoples. The strength of the Chinese legal system before the Yun period is the domination of a written penal code that governing almost every aspect of life in the Middle Kingdom. During the Yun period, however, it is generally believed that the Mongol rulers abandoned the traditional Chinese codes and administrative justice with legal precedents only. So they try to overcome or maybe overshadow the code by leading cases. Though this view could be problematic, as since the Southern Song era, legal precedents already superseded the role of formal penal codes in the judiciary. So, but anyway, because the impression or maybe the general belief that in the Yun dynasty, during the Yun dynasty, the government didn't employ a formal code to rule the regime. So the impression is here. The Ming founding empire determined that a new code must be installed to restore order after the dynastic transition, so that all over his reign he had repeatedly promulgated different versions of the Great Ming Code since the first year of the Ming dynasty. Therefore, the fact that the Law Law still provides examples of countries that without a formal penal code during the early Ming, there is a founding period of the new legal system in the Chinese world, arguably having the purpose for the reference of the legislators. But whether or not a legal code is necessary is the question behind the presentation of these countries in Law Law. As seen in the accounts of this diplomatic record of the Yun court, in the countries such as Lao, Paolo, and Dubo, it was not necessary to maintain social order, particularly in the field of commercial arrangements by a written penal code, though the quality of their order could be questionable. So let's see the situation of Lao, the country of Lao first. The nature of these people is violent. When one is in bad terms with another person, he secretly sets a trap of both to kill his opponent. So a trap is necessary to eliminate your opponent. And when one captures a person, he robs off the prisoner's heel skins so that the latter cannot walk away. So I haven't read anything about the implementation of this type of punishment or maybe private arrangement of justice. But if people really doing a test, then we will see the result of it. And also the other country, the the country of Bononin. I didn't realize whether or not I pronounced this country correctly, but it's a part of Indonesia. Okay. So the male and female people of this country all wearing swords when hanging around. Once they are in bad terms with each other, they will kill their opponents on the spot by that weapon, in fact, their home places. If they are caught within 1 month, they need to repay the crime by their own lives. If they are caught after a month, the case will be dropped. So the question here, although without penal code, but who is doing the justice? Who is the catcher, or maybe the patrol to to bring these people, the criminals, back to justice is unknown. Maybe the family members of the victim, or maybe some government officials. It's not very clear here. Anyway, it's a form of justice happened in the country as recorded by the Law Law. And also the last one I would like to discuss with you is the situation of Tubo. The country is Tubo. It's a country in the Mongolian steppe. Okay, it is recorded like that. There are no penal codes in this country. The punishment for the offenders of banditry is to be fined and indemnity double the value of the illicit goods. So it's easy to, to administer justice here in this country. You just pay double. Okay, in mainland China, it's 扣一赔二，扣一赔十. It's not that fierce in the Mongolian custom, right? To repay your crimes. Now, I think I have given you enough examples to demonstrate what was the impression of other countries' legal system as recorded in the Lawless and also the diplomatic records from the Ming period. And in general, I think there are pros and cons, or maybe there are some good and bad impressions of other peoples in the eyes of the Ming. And say, let's see. What would be an important thing that these materials, these sources can give us, and to make us to learn about how the Ming people seeing the judicial order of other people of the world outside China. So revealed by the main accounts of foreign laws, the Chinese reading public from the 17th century must have understood that the world is much bigger than imagination. Many of the foreigners were by no means lawless peoples, even though some of them had no formal penal codes as the Ming people did. They realized that the others outside the China proper have their own social orders significantly different from that of the Chinese. And sometimes their modes of justice are not inferior to the legal system of the Middle Kingdom. Enlightened and culturally equipped by the non-discriminative, if not admiring accounts of foreign laws and order found in our sources, it is possible to suggest that the Ming people have already been advised about the essential ideas about the legal systems outside China, and thus were better prepared to meet possible disputes in the foreign lands, maybe with wrong information, very likely, and perhaps seize and entering the pre-modern world outside China. It is the era of crossing paths. So when people going out to explore the world from China, to see more trading opportunities, and to reconnect with foreign merchants to make their fortunes, they were well equipped, maybe not very well equipped, but equipped by the basic knowledge about the foreign legal orders. I think it's one of the important contributions of this sort of diplomatic records and daily encyclopedia to the maybe well development of Chinese commercial orders of international trading networks in the late Ming. Thank you very much.